now, local board.
Earth is burning, earth is burning. Free peacocks, free peacocks. Free, 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 free. Public transport, free peacocks.
Peacocks. This is the carrot. Congestion charges are the stick. We think people should have the choice.
Thank you for that impromptu interlude. A little bit more enjoyable than some of the other interactions today, but so thank you very much. We have nothing from the local board. Petitions, extraordinary items, there's nothing there, which brings us on to item 8 is the Waka Kotahi update. And I'll invite Steve Mutton and Tara McMillan to make their way to the table, and we're going to receive an update on Waka Kotahi's approach to effective speed management and other relevant matters. Welcome, Steve, and it's over to you.
Great. Might we firstly congratulate them on Highway 25A. For those of us who actually enjoy the Coromandel, we are greatly indebted.
Great, thank you. I'll pass that on to the team.
Outside our delegation, Steve, but a route used by some of the councillors, it would seem.
I'm sure it is. But just on that point, quickly, Chair, this is where Waka Kotahi's taking real lessons from our projects around the country. It's first started in Kaikoura with the earthquake rebuild. We're taking that to the East Cape, we're using it in the Coromandel, and now we'll be using that innovation and key resources up in the Brynderwyns to look at the concerns we have up there. So it's all about lessons learned. Okay, thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for having us today. It's always a real pleasure to come and join you, and we value the time together. Just a couple of quick introductions. We've got Melanie Alexander here with me from Auckland Transport, as a Group Manager Network Management, because this is really a combined program of work, so it's important that AT is here with us. Look, as senior leaders in our community, the next slide please, I think you're controlling it, aren't you? It should be working now. Perfect, thank you. As senior leaders in our community, we all have a leadership role to save lives in Tamaki Makaurau. So over the past few committee meetings, we've heard about our tragic growth in DSIs. And as senior leaders, we all need to tell the safety story in our community and work together to turn this unacceptable trend around. And if we reduce the speed, we reduce crashes, which means greater efficiency and also keeps Auckland moving. So today we're talking about our safety camera program and the benefits this will bring to reduce deaths and serious injuries. And as we go through this presentation, I'd like you as councillors to think about how we can work together to ensure the importance of safer driver behaviours in our community. It's a really important subject. I'm just going to hand over now to David Strong, who's our project sponsor, to take us through the quick presentation. Thank you.
Kia ora, thanks Steve, and thank you very much councillors for giving us the opportunity to come along and have a chat. I appreciate the magnitude and complexity of the issues that you deal with, so it's nice to be able to be given some time. We will keep this brief and at a high level, but I'm more than happy to take sort of questions on anything that you'd like to cover. What I would like to do, yes?
Sorry David, we were having a little trouble, some of the members hearing you there. If you could speak perhaps a little louder.
Absolutely. Can I speak? Is this better? Can you hear me now? All right, thank you. Look, I was just saying thank you very much for the opportunity. I appreciate the scale and complexity of the issues that you're dealing with. So it's lovely to have the chance to come and talk to you about something that's dear to our hearts and dear to all New Zealanders' hearts, and that is safety on our roads, deaths and serious injuries, and what we're doing about it. I'll keep this pretty brief, but talk a little bit about why. What are we seeing? What's the problem that's happening in New Zealand and around the world, and how do we compare? What are we doing about it? And specifically within Auckland Transport, how we're working closely with them for safety cameras around the Tamaki Makaurau region. I guess this slide sort of speaks to it all. New Zealand is in the bottom third of the OECD for road deaths on a per capita basis. We're just above Chile, we are below Greece, we're below other mountainous countries with complex road systems, but we are in the bottom third. And that's not a good place to be. We have a high rate of death and serious injuries on our roads in comparison to other countries. Next slide, please. The way that we're going about addressing this is recognizing that we need to do something different in New Zealand. Road to Zero you will have heard about. It's about no one being killed or seriously injured on our roads, and specifically a 40% reduction in deaths and serious injuries by 2030. The way we're doing this is what we call a safe system approach. We're not one individual thing is addressed, but the whole lot is addressed holistically. It's about road design, it's about road maintenance, it's about vehicle safety, the types of vehicles we have, it's about speed management, and it's also about road user behavior. We're really talking about speed management today, safety cameras, and speed, so road user behavior. And we know from a cost to value perspective, safety cameras have a very high impact, and I'll talk about that in just a second. Next slide, please. So what this shows us, sorry, the previous slide, thank you. Thank you. What this shows us is the probability of deaths to occupants of a car at an increasing rate. And what we see is that speed has a major impact on the consequence. And speed, what we've found, has a impact virtually on every type of accident you have. So doing 100 k's an hour, you have around about a 50% chance of surviving and a 50% chance of dying. This does not include serious injuries. If you layer serious injuries on top of it, the number goes higher. We also know from a pedestrian perspective, if we're driving past a school at 50 k's an hour, there is a very high likelihood of death or serious injuries to anyone who steps in front of that car. Speed has a direct impact on consequence. Next slide, please. We also know from international statistics, and we've worked across many jurisdictions and engaged a lot of jurisdictions around the world, that static cameras, the one you see directly on poles, have around about a 15% reduction in deaths and serious injuries. But average cameras, which are point to point along a corridor of road, a distance, you go along a distance, it takes the average speed you go past the two cameras, has up to 56% reduction in deaths and serious injuries. These are proven around the world. They're validated statistics, and that international evidence goes directly into the program that we have here. And I'll just move on to the next slide, which talks specifically about Tamaki Makaurau. There's a fair bit of information in here, but basically what we are seeing is a 14% growth in DSIs. It's not a good place to be. We know that 87% of them, so nearly 90%, are on local roads. We know that drivers and motorcyclists remain the largest groups, and that serious injuries have grown 13% and deaths have grown 25%. Now, that is the tragedy of the, sorry, previous slide, thank you. That is the tragedy of the situation. We also know that this leads to congestion, it leads to reduced productivity, it leads to frustration by drivers because they stopped along the roads due to accidents. So we also know, as I said before, that safety cameras do make a difference, a significant difference. Next slide, please. So from a Waka Kotahi perspective, we have been given the mandate to take ownership and run the safety camera system across New Zealand. There are 5 big changes that Waka Kotahi are leading out on. The first is we are transferring the police capability to Waka Kotahi. That is all their cameras. They include their static cameras, their red light cameras, and their mobile camera network. That transition is going to start on the 1st of July next year and run for 12 months. So there'll be a coexistence period that you'd like to be aware of, where police and Waka Kotahi will run the network through to July 2025, where Waka Kotahi will own it. But police will continue to do the roadside enforcement. The second change is we're expanding that network across New Zealand. We have begun putting in some new cameras in Auckland, Auckland Tamaki Makaurau area, 9, and we're about to start doing some average cameras, and we're going to roll it out further across the country in a very graduated and well-managed manner. Thirdly is new camera and back-end technology. These are smarter cameras, they're more accurate cameras, and in the future they'll be automated, so they'll be cheaper to run. So the back-end processing system will be automated. We did some tests, and thank you very much to Auckland Council and Auckland Transport for supporting the recent trials of checking mobile phones and seatbelt wearing. They were just tests to see if this thing is a problem, and we found out that it is in New Zealand. At the moment, there is no legislation in New Zealand to enable us to look for mobile phone usage or seatbelt usage. Should it come in, the cameras, the technology that we'll be bringing in will enable us to check that as well, but that is in the future. The cameras will be on state highways and local roads. And for Waka Kotahi, because this is a new capability, we'll be designing a new operating model to deliver it. So we do have a vision, and that is an integrated, highly automated national network of safety cameras working with police who'll continue doing roadside operations. It's a bold vision, but is also the right step. Next slide, please. We work very closely with Auckland Transport, and I'd like to commend Auckland Transport for the partnership approach. It is a joy working with Auckland Transport. They front a lot of the engagement in the communities and the communications. We do planning with them. We meet regularly with them. They are leading out on the Auckland Transport network. We've also done a lot of good work with them on the site selection. And if you wish, we can dig into detail, but I do appreciate time. Suffice to say, there's a fair bit of modelling that goes on behind site selection, and we've chosen these sites very carefully within the Tamaki Makaurau region. Next slide, please. This is just a quick table to show you the new sites that we've put in. So these cameras are on the police network, but they're our cameras. They'll be transferring, of course, to us in that 12-month period between 1 July next year and 30 June 2025. And then the next slide, please. This is a map slide. It shows you the corridors for the speed average. This is the average speed cameras, the point-to-point that we're putting in. We are beginning to construct the pads and the safety barriers for these 6 corridors. The first average speed camera test we'll be doing sort of December to February, which is in Matakana Road. And then somewhere from March onwards, we will start enforcing on these. Why March? Because the new legislation comes into effect that enables us to enforce on these. We have had really good meetings with the Franklin local board and also the Hibiscus Coast local board and talk them through this. And we are meeting with Rodney in a couple of weeks' time to talk them through. Next slide, please. So that is an overview, and I'd like to once again thank you very much for the time to talk with you. This is important to us. It's important to all people in Auckland and all people in New Zealand. And I'd like to hand back to Steve to facilitate questions on our behalf. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And sadly, as we've had this meeting this morning, we've actually had a fatality on the southern motorway down Papakura Takanini area. So it just goes to show that safety is such an important topic. And as I mentioned earlier, as leaders, we need to take a leadership role around saving lives in Tamaki Makaurau. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Steve, and to you, David, for an excellent presentation. And we've got a couple of questions led off by Councillor Turner.
Thank you. Got a couple of questions. So the teeth for this is infringement fines, is that correct?
No, that's not correct, but I'll leave it to Tara to talk about that. Tara's our Head of Regulatory Change, Strategy Change.
Morning, Atato. So the rollout of cameras is about behaviour change. So we know behaviour change can come in a number of different ways. So for some out there that are driving at the speed limit, they don't have to worry about these cameras. For those where maybe they need a reminder around what is a safe and appropriate speed, purely having the camera there and operationalising it will be enough to see that behaviour change. And then for a small percentage of the population that continue to drive at above the speed limit and pose a risk not only to themselves but other drivers around them, then yes, the consequence will be in the form of an infringement.
And you haven't done a study on the return to cost based on the benefit, based on the infringement payment fees?
So we obviously have a lot of data around police and their operation, and that's very much around how they operate the current camera network. We will be learning as we start to turn these cameras on and start infringement and start to see the behaviour change, and that will be when we start to build a little bit more, I guess, data and information around what like for the sake of it, revenue comes from the cameras. But this is not a revenue generating exercise. This is absolutely about making sure that we get behaviour changes on our roads so people get to where they need to get to safely.
Thank you. The sort of vehicles that are in crashes, there's two types of, there's all your modern vehicles out there which are fitted with ABS. They're now fitted with radar. They brake for you. They sense pedestrians. They sense the white line on the side of the road. The technology we have got in vehicles, which is helping us with safety, is getting greater by the day, as is their efficiency at certain speeds for carbon emission reductions. But we also have a group of people out there who go looking for older cars, do modifications, lower the vehicle, change its ability performance-wise, even put on small steering wheels, all which have an effect. Have you got a matrix between the difference between the sorts of vehicles which are having these crashes, as I've just explained it, the difference between modified vehicles and non-modified vehicles?
Yeah. So this is slightly out of scope for the safety camera program, but in a broader regulatory sense, and our role as the land transport system regulator, we're absolutely looking across a number of areas of where risk can be posed, and looking at making sure that we're taking I guess a combination approach to how we achieve safety outcomes on our roading network. So the example you spoke about, there is one area of Wakakatahi that absolutely looks at making sure that we have vehicles at the right specifications. You'll see quite a big focus on education around encouraging drivers to go into 3-star and above vehicles, so moving away from 1- and 2-star vehicles, and often you find the 3-star and above start to get fitted out with some of those safety features that you're talking about. And then a part of our regulatory activities is the WAF and COF process, the vehicle inspection process, to make sure that vehicles are not modified unsafely, and that it's within the specifications and the rules that we have in place. So all really great points, and I think that shows that we do need to take a combined approach to vehicle safety, to speed management, to behaviour change, to infrastructure on our roads, to make sure that we are working in harmony to get the right levers and the right impacts in place to make our roads safer.
Thank you. My point was just that we are nullifying some of the technical advancements we've had to achieve, what we're doing here. So we're penalising everyone on the road for the sake of an unknown few to a degree. Thank you.
Well,
Councillor, if I could perhaps just reply to that. So I need to check the statistics further, but from my understanding, there is no correlation between modified cars being in more accidents or having higher rates of DSIs than other drivers in other cars. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Fletcher?
Oh, thank you. My question to a degree has been asked already by Councillor Turner, and that I was seeking, I think we need to be able to demonstrate to the public that this is not just a revenue generating exercise, and we have another agenda item coming up later today, which will be that same principle underpinning it. But I was curious to know, were you working more collaboratively with the police on this, and we are all in this together. Where does this leave us with council in some of the outlying rural areas and things where we're seeing a lot of rubbish being dumped on the side of the road? Is there an opportunity for picking up those sorts of events if it's in the parameter of the camera?
Do you know, it's such an interesting idea, and particularly around the future use of cameras. What I can say is we only have a legislative ability at this point in time to use these cameras for speed and red light offences, but I think and we also have to be cognizant of, privacy concerns from our public as well. And so those are all will be could be considerations into the future. But certainly the rubbish area is dear to our heart, and certainly our maintenance teams out there, they spend a lot of time picking up on the sides of the roads, keeping our roadsides clean and tidy. So it is certainly dear to Wakatahi's hearts and our suppliers that help support us in that space. So maybe a consideration for the future, but certainly not in the immediate scope for cameras.
If I could just
Mr. Chair, I just raise it as a matter of advocacy. I'm aware on the Linwood Road in Karaka, where I spend a fair bit of time, there is constantly just rubbish being left on the side of the road there. And I think it's an issue of advocacy just generally that we could perhaps provide if the mandate is not there or the delegations are not there at the moment. It's just a better use of resources that we can actually motivate and show the benefits that come with these.
Yeah, I'll get Melanie to respond to that.
Certainly we can look at how we deal with that rubbish with council. In terms of this programme, I just wanted to highlight further to Tara's comments is the selection of these routes, and as you'll see, all of the routes are in our rural road network, and that's a reflection of some technical work that's also been undertaken to select these routes. So around 57 routes was considered by Auckland Transport and Wakatahi, and these are sites that have high risk on them, but also still experiencing higher speeds on them as well. So that safety risk has been the predominant reason why those routes have been selected, and then obviously done a further site selection to make sure they were suitable for the proposal put forward by Wakatahi. So in terms of that, that's probably the driving factor for this programme.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Henderson.
Thank you. Two questions, but also just noting that Sunday is the World Day of Remembrance for road traffic victims, so something that we should all be keeping in mind and commemorating in our own ways. We've had a change of government, obviously, and a change of, I suppose, rhetoric around the Road to Zero program. How are we working with the government to kind of salvage some of this important work?
Yeah, during this time when there's a new government being forming, we're continuing with our normal business activities, but we're waiting for that strong government direction to come forth after the government's formed. So it's a bit of a wait and see at the moment.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I appreciate that. And my last question, thanks, Chair, is how are we working with the local boards? I remember when I was a local board chair, we would always be lobbying for this or that speed camera in different places, and they really do have knowledge that we can tap into, especially when investment's coming to the table. So how are we working with them?
Yeah, David's been engaging with some local boards, so I'll pass it over to David to pick that one up.
Thank you, and thank you, Councillor. I am a firm believer in face-to-face talking with people. Wellington needs to get out of Wellington and hear what is happening, and local knowledge is vital. Auckland Transport's done a fantastic job of keeping local boards informed through their communications. We had an opportunity to talk to Franklin a couple of weeks ago, and then Hibiscus Coast, and I was fortunate enough to go and talk with them and hear their thoughts. There is a balance, of course, because what I've found is enthusiasm from local boards for more safety cameras. You know, and that red light camera on that intersection, what about that school, what about this? Which shows to me a deep care for the community, but also understanding of the value that this brings. We will continue that local engagement, and you know, we're starting this in Tamaki Makaurau. This will be going more broadly across New Zealand, and I'm looking forward to the opportunity also to get out across the country with others like, you know, Tara, etc., to hear from other local councils what they need. So it's going pretty well, and yeah, thank you for that.
Thanks, appreciate the work.
Good questions, Councillor Henderson. IMSB member Brown.
Kia ora, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just as a recent addition to this committee, and not wanting to go back in time too far, could you just give me a 20, 30-second download as to the rationale of the transfer of the police capabilities to Wakakotahi?
Sure, we'll
Yeah,
hand it to Tara. Yep, Tara.
Yeah, great question. So The reason for safety cameras to come from police and come into Whakatahi is to more closely align them with alongside some of our road safety interventions. So to bring safety cameras in alongside speed, speed limits, having safe and appropriate speeds out around the country, alongside our infrastructure work, so that we can integrate in those activities. So David touched on in his presentation that it's not one road safety intervention that's more important, that's above and beyond something else. It's the combination of these working together. So by bringing safety cameras in and considering the role of safety cameras, which is a cost-effective treatment, but also alongside infrastructure, so medium barriers, getting the speeds right on our roads, it allows us to integrate all those activities together, taking a longer term view about how those come together, while still allowing police to continue to do what they do really well, and that's those roadside interactions with the public, real time, managing the risk on the roads in real time.
Okay, no, thank you.
A useful context there. Councillor Darby.
Thank you. Thanks, team. Good to see you, Steve and Melanie and others. Just in terms of the operational reliability of this system of cameras, both static and average, that will be rolled out. We have had some issues in the past, don't want to dwell on them too much, but you know, we've had cameras up that haven't been operational under police jurisdiction, with issues in the back office and firmware, software, etc. So can you just give us some confidence going forward that what's up and what the public see will be operating? Can we expect 90% operational time, or is it 80, or is it 100? That's my first question. And I'll run through these questions, and then maybe non-camera questions we'll take later. Is that how you intended to do it for Whakatahi? Is that best? The average cameras, I note, deliver 4 times the safety outcomes, 4 times, and these are a new development. And my question is really, my second question is, can these average speed cameras, can they be deployed in denser urban areas where there's more interruptions in the journey from, you know, A to B? And then probably picking up on Councillor Shane Henderson's question about, you know, the guarantees or some surety that this is going to be, you know, top business, at least for Whakatahi, subject to GPSs and all the rest of it. But there's no backing away in terms of through Whakatahi's eyes on these deployments and the ongoing deployment plan. I expect there's a much bigger plan that's not visible here today, even if there was a threat of a reduction. It is not in Whakatahi's view anything that it would be backing away from the deployment. So 3 areas there, if you manage to catch those.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor. I might approach those in reverse order. So firstly, just to give you the confidence and the reassurance that safety cameras is one of our #1 priorities at Whakatahi. We sit around the board table. We're reporting into the board on a monthly basis on this. We obviously do other enforcement activities within Whakatahi, so this is seen as another enforcement activity and capability coming into Whakatahi, and again allows us to achieve those road safety outcomes, which is, you know, top of mind from us from a regulatory perspective. So absolutely priority, will continue to be a priority and be integrated in. The second piece is around where we locate these cameras. So average speed cameras, so we first look at where we've got risk on our roading network, and we are looking for those high risk locations and looking at where there is evidence of where we don't have the right behaviours in place, and that is causing an increase in crashes and social harm, and ultimately and also travel time efficiency impacts as well associated with those crashes. There are different cameras in place for different reasons. So not every, and you talked about 4 times benefit for average speed cameras. but not every part of our network is appropriate for us to put average speed cameras and run these cameras down every single corridor. So we are tackling those corridors that are quite windy, that have a number of often kind of bends in the roads where we often see a high incidence of crash rates. And those are the ones that are appropriate, where we want to treat the entire corridor. We want to make sure that the travelling public maintain that safe speed all the way along the length of that corridor, versus some of these spot locations that we've got around the country, where those specific locations have high crash rates and deaths and serious injuries, and that's where a static camera is more appropriate. And then the intersections is around red light cameras. So it is really important that for us, and to be able to tell that story to the travelling public around why we're using what camera for what location, that we are really consistent and overt with the decision making process and how we've arrived at that. Because at the end of the day, we need the support of all of our stakeholders, and we are getting that. And we can also tell you that where we have put these different cameras in and where we've been running them, so the cameras that have gone into Tamaki Makaurau, the police are running at the moment, where those have gone in, we have seen a reduction in speeds, and we know that is going to translate to a reduction in those crashes and serious injuries. And then your last question around the operation of the cameras. So this year has been a significant focus on the back office system. We are building a robust back office system that will enable us to support the volume of cameras that will come across from police, the new cameras, the expanded cameras that we bring on stream, and we will be working through operating models for the use of those cameras and at what times they will be operating to give best effect to the behaviour change that we need to see. So that will all play through as part of our operating model work, so that we can make sure that the camera network is running and is optimised as effectively as possible, that for us that we've got strong integrity in that system, and that we maintain the support of the public for these important enforcement activities.
Thank you, that's really comprehensive. I'll come back to a question on the bus priorities for the Western Express when you've taken the others, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Newman online.
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry I couldn't be there. I haven't been well for a few days. But can I just understand, so this point-to-point technology to secure the average speed treatment for drivers, this is in reliance of the Land Transport Road Safety Amendment Act, which received royal assent on the 31st of August this year. Is that correct?
That's correct, Councillor Newman. So that we received royal assent. I think it was the last one to get passed through before Parliament closed. Now that comes into effect from March next year, or April next year. So end of March next year. So what we are doing is getting ready to. We're working on the construction and the install for those initial point-to-point cameras, and we will be legislatively able to start infringing from around April next year.
Okay, so what's your ability to pivot if the circumstances within which you're allowed to enforce as per legislation changes? I presume that you are funded for one financial year only. I mean, I don't want to go down the, I think, slightly pejorative discussion around implications of change in government, but this is quite controversial. And it wouldn't be the worst thing to check in to see if this is the sort of thing that will continue to enjoy a mandate in out years, noting that elections have consequences.
Yeah, so Councillor, the cameras are funded out of the National Land Transport Fund, which has a 3-yearly cycle. And this has been signalled as part of the current GPS that we're working to, that's out for consultation, that safety cameras are featured in there under road safety investment. So the signals are very strong, and also it's obviously a priority for us as an organisation. So we're pretty comfortable with the funding and being able to lock that in 3 yearly cycles.
Okay, but the
If I
current
could just
GPS
add
that
on, sorry,
okay,
Councillor.
you go, and then I'll follow up.
Councillor, just the thing about the point-to-point cameras, and thank you for your question. They're internationally recognised. It's a system that's well tried, tested, and proven all across the world, and the technology that we are bringing into New Zealand is well tried and tested technology. Should something change, the cameras can still do static-based recording as well, but the intention is you get greater value from that point-to-point speed average.
Yeah, no, I'm not disputing the cameras. I can see the benefit of them, but some people will view that as a bit nanny state, and nanny state, well, she didn't do too well on the 14th of October. But I guess the point being that the GPS discussion that we currently have, the consultation of that's the GPS from a government that no longer exists. So I'm just wanting to make sure that you can do something in the event that your mandate in relation to this particular legislation can be sustained in the event that the direction from the new government is different from what you would have hoped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Understand where you're going with that. So our mandate and at the moment is to build the foundation. So what you're seeing at the moment is we've got a handful of initial cameras that are in place. We're also need to be doing the migration from police cameras in. So that's what we're ready for. And then the future direction around the pace of expansion, that is yet to be determined, and that will come as part of any government direction that we get going forward. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Councillor Hills.
Kia ora, thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I have two questions. First, I know that we spend in 2022 injury costs of $607 million. ACC says. Do you have the figures of the overall cost to community of a death? That I know you've updated those recently. If you
not off the top of my head, Councillor.
Yeah, we can come back to you with those.
Yeah. The other one, you've got this graph here, which I think is pretty disappointing. Shows we're in the bottom third of the OECD for deaths and serious injuries. Do you have any high-level sort of understandings on why that is? So I know there's been various studies on that.
Yep, Tara, can you cover that one off, please?
Yeah. So the reason for that is where we have implemented interventions, we have seen the benefit that's come from them. And I think for New Zealand, we haven't been going hard and fast enough in terms of the rollout of those interventions. And that's why you're seeing the stats of where we are. So internationally, where other jurisdictions have gone harder and faster with the pace of rolling out road safety pieces, have certainly seen the dividends. And so New Zealand has been on a slightly slower trajectory, but all things are pointing to when we do it and we do stay in line with other jurisdictions around the world, that we are seeing a reduction in deaths and serious injuries at those specific points.
Thank you. Just very quickly, sorry, thanks, Chair. Just two questions before from Councillor Newman around change in direction. I mean, I have followed this a long time. The Safer Journeys direction came from the last national government and then updated GPS, so it seems like pretty similar. But whose responsibility is it? Is it the Waka Kotahi Board, government, us, if you don't act on identified safety issues? Who's responsible for the deaths under the director's laws?
Sorry, Tara, that's a really good question, and I think I'll go back to my answer earlier before that. We really need to wait for the new government to form, where they will give us very clear direction around the policy they want to take. Obviously, safety is the number one priority for our Waka Kotahi Board, and they take it very seriously, of which Tara's already talked about. Thank you.
Just a quick one from me, following on from Councillor Hills in respect of that international comparison. I think we're just above Chile and way beneath the likes of Ireland, which has a roading network in many places that is, pretty basic, very narrow roads and hedges and all sorts of safety concerns. In all this, I guess members of the public might ask, is there any data coming through in terms of that international comparisons with respect of driver attitude, driver training, anything particularly specific to the culture of our driving environment? Because what we hear anecdotally is that, you know, often New Zealanders, and certainly when you go overseas, you notice the difference, you know, far more aggressive, they're far less inclined to take their licence obligations perhaps as seriously as some countries where people you know, are very conscientious about their responsibility. Is there something specific to our kind of drivers' behaviour that has been around for a long while that is really at the heart of these, you know, very disturbing statistics?
Yeah, look, I think you touched on it, that it is anecdotal, and it's very difficult for us to compare the culture and the behaviours. We do an attitudes, a public attitudes survey to our different interventions, and that gives us some good data and evidence around where our public are at, which then helps us to I guess, work on the education, you know, correcting misinformation out there, get the buy-in for what we need to do to drive a change. We certainly work very, very closely with police, and certainly post-COVID, coming out of lockdowns. Just like Australia, we saw quite a big significant uplift in risk-taking activities out on the road. So we go through cycles of where higher risk behaviours are heightened, and I guess what we are looking to do is continue to educate and move forward with those interventions like safety cameras that we know are going to make a difference, and get the support and the buy-in to be able to roll those out.
Right, thanks, Tara. Our last two questions from the Browns. Wayne first, and then Billy.
Okay, thanks for that. With regard to the cameras, and you, I nervously hear you say you're building back office. I mean, please don't go and do something that no one else does anywhere. And I want to know that cameras are going to be invading the spaces everywhere for various reasons, and we're going to debate later on this morning about time of use charging cameras. We have cameras on the Northern Motorway. We seem to have them only used for one reason. I mean, 15 years ago, I saw a series of cameras which you could just buy straight off the rack with a back office system already in thing, which would allow 6 lanes of motorways to be interacted with at one time, and within 300 metres, police could be informed of which of those were unregistered, which didn't have a warrant of fitness, which one had unpaid parking and speeding tickets, and they were eliminated. And so, are we able to are you thinking along those lines, or are you just going to have them just for speeding? Because it beats me that when you go over the Northern Motorway, they don't pick you up for everything else, because there is plenty of evidence that unregistered and unwarranted cars are overrepresented in accidents. So that's my first question. Can you ensure that these are not just going to be for one dumb thing?
So Wayne, absolutely. So while we're talking to you just about safety cameras today, we do have an integrated network of camera, and we're certainly thinking along those lines. And another example is one of our other programs that's very closely linked to this is our commercial vehicle safety program, and we have cameras and on-road technology that actually does 24/7 monitoring of overweight heavy vehicles. Which contribute to, I think, around 7 DSIs a year, not to mention the damage to our roading network as well associated with that. So, and yes, we have quite a large operational camera network that looks at, you know, whenever there's crash or disruptions and congestion and stuff going on around the network, how we connect emergency services in to actually clear roads. So our approach is absolutely to look at how that integrates in together, notwithstanding that we have current constraints around the legislative settings and our ability to use cameras for different purposes, which may well change and shift over the future, and we'll continue to make sure that all of that comes together.
Okay, so the technology will be able to adjust to the legislation rather than the other way around. That's good. Now, with regard to claims about reducing road accidents and bits and pieces, how closely do you work on reports from FENS about who's involved, what type of involvement, and do you link it with social changes? For instance, there's been a significant increase in road deaths since the emergence of methamphetamine into our society. Do you measure those sorts of things rather than just speed?
So we look at, so we are in the business of keeping New Zealand moving, and also making sure that anyone on our roading network and rail network is kept safe at the same time. Now our emergency services are really critical partners. I mean, those are obviously our first responders. They are seeing crash rates for different reasons. What we monitor is the causes of crashes, and that can be a number of different, methods. So obviously, drugs. You mentioned drugs. That'll be one of the contributing factors. We look at people not wearing seat belts. We look at distracted drivers. So we look at all of those, and our emergency services. We certainly use them we touch base with them regularly. We have forums where we interact with them to get their lay of the land, so that we can start to triangulate around bringing together all of the reasons for crashes and making sure that we're taking more of a integrated approach to the treatment of crashes. We're talking a bit about speed today, and there's a focus on speed because of the nature of safety cameras. But speed is invariably, when there's a death and serious injury, speed is generally always a factor, because that determines whether you walk away from that crash, or if you have a lifelong injury, or if you in fact we have a fatality. So that is the reason why speed is first and foremost in the conversation. But there are also other contributing factors to crashes which we acknowledge, and we build that intelligence as we go as well.
Well, I chat regularly with the FENS guys that I know, and single car crashes on sections of open road where there is nobody else involved, there's no reason whatsoever, and they're upside down in a drain, and it's always methamphetamine. And so I think that it's time that we included some thinking along those lines, because there's nobody else involved, and really they die because they don't have their seatbelts on, but they have the accident because they're...
Yeah, and roadside drug testing is coming into play as well, so that's going to be, I think, a step in the right direction as well.
Okay, we'll talk to those guys. They get a great feedback. Thank you for my opportunity to speak.
Good point, Mr. Mayor. Member Brown?
How blessed am I to share such an illustrious last name of Brown. Again, I just don't want to make any assumptions, but I can see efficiencies in managing these assets and the integration with what's going on the roads in general. I guess my question is just about infringement services. They will remain with the police, obviously?
No, so for any camera issued infringement, that will be issued from Whakatahi going forward. So there'll be a period, as David touched on right at the start, a coexistence period where they'll be issuing infringements, and for the cameras, as they start to come across, we'll take over that infringement. But ultimately, all camera issued infringements will be issued by Whakatahi. Police will still do their roadside infringements into the future.
No, thanks for that clarity.
Councillor, if I could just add one point to that. One of the advantages of a new system being developed by Whakatahi is that we're aiming our vision that this will be in a largely automated system. At the moment, it's a largely manual system, so it'll be fast, it'll be more efficient in terms of people, and therefore hopefully the whole cost of service will come down as well.
Right, thanks. So that's the end of the questions on the camera. Councillor Darby, you signalled you'd like to answer a question. If I don't know if Steve's prepared for it, but if not, I'm sure he'll get back to you.
Yeah, so Steve, WX one is underway as of Sunday and largely successful. But there are barriers to that, and they're largely in the domain of Waka Kotahi and the lack of bus priority measures. I'm hearing reports this morning, people waiting 4 minutes in a bus, an express bus, just to get out of Westgate onto the motorway system. There's other points on the motorway where bus priority is not evident. It stops too early. And there are issues also at the Te Aratu interchange, and I think Auckland Transport signalled those issues to Waka Kotahi very early on. I understand that you've been testing that WX this morning. Can you just give us a sense of what Waka Kotahi might be looking at to improve the reliability of this 1 week old, less than 1 week old service? With bus priority measures. Now, I make that request because I've been a regular saying where is the road space reallocation on the state highway network, and we've got bus freight and T3 priority on ramps on the northern motorway and other motorways that are not enforced. They're not cameraed. When are we going to see those sorts of cameras and that sort of enforcement and more bus priority, and particularly for the WX1? Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Councillor. So yeah, we're really excited about this new service. It's been great to work with Auckland Transport around getting that service up and running. As you'll be very aware, there's been some feedback from customers of Auckland around some issues, and we got our senior leaders in our organisation and Auckland Transport to catch the peak our bus this morning, so they could see it firsthand. And there were some really good observations that came through, especially around Westgate on-ramp, where you've talked about. Also through the interchange area for Waterview Tunnel, and also as you come into the city. So, we think we can change the on-ramp configuration reasonably quickly, and we'll be looking at how we can do that. The team will be working on a design on that very quickly. The area around the Waterview Tunnel is a little bit more challenging due to the lack of space. So the team will definitely do some brainstorming around that. And the big issue we have is coming to the city, into the CBD area. It's very constrained, and there's got to be some options looked at through there. The team is going to be looking at next week to do a bus trip on the PM peak, just so we understand those any issues they might have in that service as well. So it's definitely work in progress at the moment, but really interested in taking in the insights and doing something differently around that.
Right. Thanks, Steve, for that update. That's really helpful. That's the end of the questions. I'm happy to move that the presentation be received. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Dalton.
Can we name the update though, because it was quite specific, other than a few other questions?
Name the update.
Yeah, it was about the static and speed cameras.
Safety cameras.
Yeah, the safety camera update.
Yep. Yeah.
Thank
you.
So
we've captured that. I don't think there's any need for anyone to talk to it. All those in favour? Against? Okay, thanks, Steve, to you and the team, Tara, David and Melanie. Thanks for your contributions today.
Thank you.
We've got one more item before lunch, folks, on the weather, response to the weather events. So I think we'll just have a quick couple of minute break while the people get themselves set up. So just a couple of minutes to stretch your legs and get a drink, and then we'll try and do that before lunch if that's all right with everyone. Thank you.